All right, there we go. So, as you find your way into the room, I welcome you. I welcome you to the Kind Mind community. And I welcome and am very honored to have Jack Pransky right out of retirement, live out of retirement. Jack and I have not had a conversation. This would be the first time Jack is actually meeting me, or maybe being informally introduced to this room and to myself. And excuse me. And I thank you, Jack, with all my heart for coming to spread some of your wisdom, which by my research in the last month has been extensive to see the things that you've done. And I know that Jack loves questions, everybody. And it's been in the best interest of this room to support the speaker in the way they like to do things. So what I thought might work, Jack, and you can let me know, I've got a few questions that I could start with that might open up the conversation. And then maybe we could just open the room up to see what everybody else has in mind for sharing or asking you where you've been, what you've done, and your myth, your legend, your history, those sort of things. How does that sound?
That sounds great to me.
Terrific. So I'm just going to turn this on to speaker view. And
And
I'm just,
first, it's really great to meet you, Kelly.
it's great to meet you too. Jack and I had some interesting conversations back and forth, and I had to really pull on some of my full faith moments. You know, where this community is a community of their word. And even though it was quite a while ago where Jack said, "Yeah, I'm in," we had a time change. Hey, Jack, I changed the time on you, and then we had some situations that were just creating distance. I was away, and Jack was in movement, and so I'm just so glad that you're here. I'm just so glad that you're here. Excuse me.
My
Bear with
pleasure.
me. I've been under the weather a little bit, so I just want to say I'm going to try to keep myself muted as most I can. But Jack, the experience that people are well. First, I want to say that I don't know if everybody in the room knows you, and I definitely know that my group, the people that I've worked with over the last 2 years in sharing the principles in British Columbia in Canada, um, we haven't gotten to the work that you've done or the experiences and the amount of accomplishments that you've had. So I think it would be really, really cool if you were to share with this room on a level of nobody knows anything and this is who you are and where you've come from. So my first question is, how did your journey begin and who are you?
Um, I was actually hoping I wouldn't have to talk about that anymore since I put it in my books, but that's not the case. So I'm happy to do that.
Oh, thank you.
I was a prevention guy in the field of prevention of problem behaviors. And I had gotten to the point where I thought I knew what I was talking about in that field. So much so that I wrote a book about it. And just as my book was going to press, I bumped into Roger Mills, who happened to be doing a conference, giving a conference at a prevention conference. And I was just one of the members of the audience. And I had just spent 3 years of my life researching what works in prevention. I had never heard of the guy. And he started talking about all these incredible results that he got in these two low-income inner-city housing projects near Miami, Florida. And I was immediately suspicious because I hadn't heard of him. And yet, when a couple of the women from the housing project started talking, it just did something to me because I could tell that whatever happened to them had happened at such a deep level that they would never be the same and they would never turn back. And we weren't used to getting these kinds of results in prevention before. So at that point, I got really interested. And I ended up asking Roger Mills if I could write a book about what happened in those housing projects. And he said yes. And so the book came out. The book is called Modelo, and which is the name of the housing project. Um, and then while I was doing the research, interviewing the people whose lives had been affected most, I thought, well, in order to understand this, really, I have to get to the source. The source was Sid Banks. And I will make a long story very short by just saying that he blew my mind apart. And I've never been the same since. And so, it just became my life. It became my personal life and my work life. And suddenly there was no separating the two of them.
So you'd had a career for quite a while. I
Yeah,
read in the field,
26 years, something like that.
and you were working what I would call traditional or formal psychology, and there was a change. So Roger Mills came in, but what actually happened? What happened between what you were doing and then what you were doing?
You mean for me?
Yes.
Um, well, I and the entire field of prevention was working from the outside in,
Mhm.
meaning there was certain information. And when I talk about prevention, I'm talking about prevention of alcohol and drug abuse, delinquency, child abuse and neglect, sexual abuse, teenage pregnancy, teenage suicide, all those kinds of things. And what we were doing was giving people information, teaching people skills, um, building supports, and um, trying to, if people who were in the prevention field were knowledgeable enough, trying to change the conditions in the communities so that people would feel that more well-being from within. So all that was for the purpose of people feeling more well-being from within, so they wouldn't um, become involved in those problem behaviors. So what Roger Mills brought to the world was that the 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 notion of the knowing, I should say, the knowing that everyone already has health and well-being automatically inside of them anyway. It's like our natural state. And the only thing that we can do is think our way away from it, or at least give ourselves the illusion that we can think ourselves away from it. And so that's where he started, was pointing people there, pointing people within themselves for the answers. And then when those people caught on, their lives started to improve. They started feeling that well-being inside of themselves. Um, they then started, talking with their families and their neighbors, and suddenly it started rippling out. And when a critical mass of people got together, they worked to change the conditions in the community. So it's like completely opposite and completely backwards compared to everything that we had been, um, looking at in prevention before. So people called Roger Mills crazy.
Mhm.
They say you had to change the conditions first, and he proved them wrong.
In your book, which I just absolutely love, Hope for All, you speak about Roger. I'm going to call it the grounding, for lack of a better word, right now. But you speak about Roger just having so much innate health realization within himself that he would go into these places that were, needing the support, and he would see past through behaviors and attitudes and actions of what those people, how these people received them. So much so that, he would have to stand in his own ground through the winds of whatever was coming at him. And that was the reason it worked.
I've never seen anything like it, to tell you the truth.
Can you tell us a bit
I,
about?
I mean, people, those, you know, the residents of Modelo first, and because Modelo was the first, Roger Mills had to do everything himself. And, you know, the community was African American. Roger was white. And when he first came in, Roger's kind, he was kind of like a not a usual personality, you could say. And they wanted him out of there. They would try to do everything in their power to get him out of there. And he would just let it roll off his back like water off a duck's back. It never bothered him. He thought to himself, of course they're going to be treating me this way when their thinking is the way that it is. Of course. Had nothing to do with him. He didn't take it personally. He just realized that people's actions follow directly from their thinking. And if their thinking was, they were used to thinking a certain way, and they were innocent about that. We can't help the way that we've taken on the thinking that we've taken on. And until somebody points out to us that it's not reality, it's just our thinking, it's like a completely different world. A whole other world opens up when you realize that it's not reality. It's just something that we're inadvertently creating. And then we get to live with the feeling and the experience that we've created, like it's us. I mean, what a complete mind blower of an experience it is. And so what Roger was doing was, just pointing people in that direction. Now, he didn't go in talking that way. He didn't go in talking the three principles at all. He just knew that the only thing that really counts is people's own insights. And when people's minds relax, they have a better chance of hearing insights from within themselves. And so he really tried to just have as much fun as possible with people. And at the same time, he would, like, the residents had said that they were having trouble with their kids, so he put together a parenting class, but it wasn't a traditional parenting class to, teach parenting from the outside in, which is the way it usually is. He would just use that as opportunities to help people see the three principles in action without actually using the words mind, consciousness, and thought. But they could relate to certain things, like they could relate to moods. And that, when you're in a low mood, they finally caught on that, you can't trust what you're thinking when you're in a low mood. And if you can't trust your thinking when you're in a low mood, it's best to wait and wait for the mood and the thinking that goes there. They're like this, you can't separate them, the mood and the thinking. Wait for it to shift, and then you see with more clarity, same situation. So it's stuff like that. And so little by little, people caught on, and finally there was a critical mass of people that made the community completely change. And then, like Hope for All is kind of like interviews with people of projects that happened subsequent to Modelo and carried it on, you could say.
So my head goes to, like, you're filling in some blanks for me, Jack, which I really appreciate because, well, my question goes to, where did you get involved? Like, that Roger went in, so this was a thing he took on, and he went over and he did Modelo. And when did you get in there? What was your pull or feeling of getting connected in that way? And I know there was a hurricane, if I'm not mistaken, or something happened with weather, and you didn't go when you thought you were going to go. What was it that was pulling you to get down there or to be a part of that?
Um, I wanted to find out what in the world happened there. How in the world could it be possible for people's lives to turn around like that?
Mm-hmm.
It was unfathomable to me. I mean, the people who were, severe alcoholics, coming out of that project, like, without going into treatment, not thinking of themselves as alcoholics anymore. They weren't considering themselves recovering. They considered themselves recovered. And people who were being severely beaten by their boyfriends on crack, saying no more, but doing it with see, what used to, if they said no more from a position of weakness, it would have resulted in a harder beating. But when you say no more from a position of power, when you really feel that from within yourself, that's powerful. And the guys backed off. I mean, some of them had to kick them out of their house and change the locks on their door, but they did that. So for me, I didn't know any of that. I just didn't know how it happened. And so I went down there more like a journalist, to try to capture what happened. I wasn't doing that work myself. I was just a reporter. I wanted to report what happened. But at the same time, once I had my experience with Sid Banks, I kind of knew what happened to them because it happened to me. Now, because it happened to me, I didn't necessarily know how to talk about it with anybody. I heard something way, 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 way beyond my intellect. And it took me a while for my intellect to catch up to it. And I can thank George Pransky for that, for the two to become aligned, more aligned, you could say. So that was my journey into it. And then I found out I couldn't do prevention from the outside in anymore. I just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
My heart wasn't in it. I'd had a couple of I used to go around the country doing prevention trainings, and I had a couple scheduled even after this happened. And I started to do one of them, and I just bombed. I was terrible because my heart was not in it anymore. And it took me a while for the shift to happen. I've seen that happen with a lot of other people too. It takes a while. You realize you can't do what you did anymore, but you don't know how to do the new thing. And so there's this gap in there somewhere that kind of has to be bridged.
Yeah.
But I didn't have anybody around me in the state of Vermont. I mean, Dick and Bettinger was up there at the time, but he was just doing, counseling and treatment kind of stuff. And I didn't know Dickon well at the time. And, nobody else was doing prevention from the inside out except for Roger and the people that he had trained, and none of them were around Vermont. So I just pretty much had to make it up as I went along. And as somebody said, mistakes are wonderful opportunities to learn. So I did a lot of learning that way.
I had to, there's a few blanks in there for me. So you're mentioning some names which people here in the room may or may not know. So you've got Roger Mills, who had an experience with Sid. And then you have Dickin, and I'm sure there's more psychologists that, and you mentioned George. How did you go from no Sid to Sid? Where did the Sid experience come in?
Well, because I had it in my mind, I have to go to the source. I saw that he was going to be doing a seminar with George Pransky, who at the time I hadn't met since we were little kids. And I had no idea that he was involved in this stuff. But I saw that they were doing a seminar together.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get there. I won't bore you with those details, but I called Sid up and I said, I'm doing this. I'm writing about what happened with Roger Mills, and I know that you were the source of it. And he said, "Oh, it's got nothing to do." I said, "Well, I know it didn't have anything to do with you directly, but you were the inspiration behind. Oh, it's got nothing to do with me. Besides, I can't talk to you now because I've got people coming in from all over the world, and I'm sorry, I can't talk." So I got bummed out, and next day I went over to see Roger, who invited me over to the hotel that the seminar was happening in, and he was introducing me to a lot of people, and he introduced me to Sid Banks as one of the crowd. And then I went to lunch with a whole bunch of people, and then Sid zeroed in on me at lunch, and that's how he blew my mind apart. I wasn't expecting it at all. So that's how it happened. I don't know, what else to tell you.
I think it's always a serendipitous or auspicious thing when an insight comes in, as we all know that we don't know when they're coming, we don't know what's going to happen. So you had this engagement with Sid, and you were at that convention, and it was with George. Was that a psychologist convention?
It was
Convention?
just a Sid Banks seminar, basically. I
Mm.
mean, there were psychologists there that had heard about it somehow. And
Mm-hmm. So
the
from,
other really
yeah.
interesting thing was uh, maybe halfway through the seminar, when people started asking a lot of intellectual questions, Sid said, I get the feeling we're going backwards right now, and it wouldn't help to keep going in this direction. So everybody go out and have a good time. And he walked off the stage. And, and George was just sitting there like, huh?
Typical Sid
And
fashion.
by that time, I already had my experience with him, so I was filled up. I just walked out of the room, but a lot of people were angry. They had paid what they thought was good money to. They wanted a full ceremony, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
selfishly, I'd gotten what I came for even before the seminar started.
So you leave the conference, and what happens?
Um, well, for a while, life didn't life as I knew it no longer made sense. Um, it's kind of hard to describe when you see something so deeply within yourself, but there are no words to it, because you're hearing it so deep, you're hearing it beyond your intellect. Um, you can't find words to describe it. And when I say life as I knew it made no sense, I mean, that's really what happened. For a while, I walked around in a daze. And finally, I just started to see what Sid meant. And at the time, I remember I only knew one thing, and I knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt, and that was I only knew that Sid knew that he was speaking truth. That's all I knew. I knew that he knew. And it was the most amazing thing that I had ever known in my life. So all of my look in the spiritual direction, which I was doing personally, just screeched to a halt. Because I was looking for an answer, and I thought I had one. I couldn't articulate what the answer was, but I knew what it was deep inside myself. But I'm not sure any of this is really helpful for people, talking about my experience.
Well, I think what it does is it gives the room a little bit of understanding of where you've come from. So that's your experience and the strength that you came from it. Yet the message that I think this book and that people look for is the hope for all. And so that this book came. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me say something about that.
Yeah.
I think hope for all comes from two places. And that is this spiritual essence, pure consciousness, whatever you want to call it, purest part of universal mind that is within us, that cannot possibly be stomped out. And if people can't relate to the fact that they have it, all it takes is one thought, one insight to see it. And it's always possible to be seen. So Sid was always saying, we're one thought away from our health. That's what he meant. Our health is there. We're one thought away from realizing it. Automatic hope for everybody. Nobody who has not seen it yet can't see it. We all have it's more than potential. It's more than ability. We all can see it because it's part of us. It's who we are. It's just helpful to be pointed in that direction. The second thing that's automatic hope is that whatever we're thinking now, we could be completely depressed. We could be totally caught in anger. We could be constantly worried, really bothered. That all can change with the next thought. And suddenly we are not having that experience anymore. I mean, that's how fluid our experience is it changes with the next thought. And, we have a tendency to call what we're experiencing reality. If it's reality, it's a very fluid reality and changes constantly. So we actually can't know what reality is out there. I mean, there is some reality out there. I mean, computer screen, but we would never know it, what it is, really, because it comes to us through our own thinking. So it's already completely tainted by the time it gets into us. So, but whatever we're seeing now can shift. So that's the other automatic hope.
We have some comments in the chat. Michael Fall says he loves the statement that Roger did, not going in talking the three principles.
Yeah.
And Helen, do you want to come on and share your?
Did you say that was Michael Fall?
Yes.
Hi, Michael. A long time. Haven't seen you in a long time. You're not on my screen right now. I can only get so many people in at once, apparently. So.
Please feel free, Michael, to come on if you'd like. I'm just going to go to gallery. I think this is a great time to open it up. So, Helen, did you want to share on your comment, or do you want me to just read it? I know. There you are.
Yeah, I'm happy to share.
Hmm.
Hi, Jack. It's nice to see you, and Kelly, great to see you. And yeah, I hope that you are well. And I just wanted to share that I really loved the Beyond Intellect, hearing from Beyond Intellect, and why that's resonating so much with me right now, because I've been around the principles and the understanding, or how I understand the principles, for a few years now, and I always have this panic that I don't remember or I don't recall everything I need to know. And then that thinking reminds me that I just need to drop back into heart and drop back into that trusted heart feeling, because my intellect is always ready to say that I'm missing something, or I don't know what I'm on about, and doubting myself. So, and hearing you say about you hearing Beyond Intellect is really reassuring. So thank you so much.
Welcome. And that's very well put. Dropping back into our heart. Very well put. I love that. Because
you taught me that.
That's really what we want to be doing, is that means like forgetting our thinking. And what's left? Like, what's left when we forget our thinking?
Yeah, just how we're feeling.
Yeah,
and thinking about the feeling.
That pure state of well-being, yeah, and peace, love, and wisdom. That's what's left when our thinking goes away.
Mm. Mm.
That's the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something I have to drop out of every day. Yeah, I have to drop out every moment sometimes, but I don't always catch.
I've had to drop out a lot lately.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a never-ending process. It's not like you see it once and that's all there is to it. I mean, because we're human beings, we're in life. We are always bumping up against life. And so it's always giving us many more opportunities to see through those eyes, to see through the eyes of the three principles. And where we have a blind spot, and I certainly have a lot of mine, we tend to see reality where we have blind spots instead of seeing that it's just our thinking. And there isn't a single person that I know, including Sid Banks, who didn't bump into his own thinking. Because he was human too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just really very, very grateful, Jack, that you exist, and that I was really lucky to spend a few days with you.
I'm that myself, but I'm grateful that all of you exist too, for sure.
It's to spend a few days with you. And if I could just be cheeky enough to ask a question, I really felt it when you said you were hoping not to talk about the beginnings, and because you'd written a book, and I know you didn't just say that to plug your book.
But, I actually wasn't thinking of that at all. But
so what conversations do you look forward to? What conversations really excite you?
Anything that brings me joy. Anything that brings me love. mostly from within. And for me, that's been the hardest place to find it. It's been easier for me to find it outside myself. And I'm learning very slowly. I'm a slow learner. That really looking inside ourselves to the point where we can say we really love ourselves is the real ticket to our own happiness and love within ourselves.
I'm so glad you said that.
I should say right now that a relationship just left me, a 5-year relationship, and since I was living with her, I am out on my own. I have no idea where I'm going to be living, where I want to be living. I'm kind of living out of my car right now, just going place to place, trying to explore different places that I might want to settle down. And I'll tell you, I have had some moments, but thank God for what I know from the 3 principles. And thank God from what I know when I wrote my book, Seduced by Consciousness, and a 10-year relationship had left me, because I'm going through this one, at least so far. It happened just a short time ago, at least so far, with a lot more health, you could say, than I did before. And you know, I've certainly had my moments, but I just see that this is really important. This is the most important thing I'm going to say the entire session that we're having here together. I realized that there's whatever's happened. There's 2 things going on, 3 things actually. Whatever is happening in the outside world, that's true. What's happening in the outside world, that's reality. What's happening in the outside world. But then there's everything else. And everything else means our own meaning that we make of it for ourselves. And therefore the experience that we get of it. So what's real? My partner left me. What's real? I don't have a house anymore. Okay. Everything else about that is my own creation. And when I realize that, I'm fine. I may be sad at times, but I'm fine. I know that might shift to anger temporarily, might shift to gratefulness, which I'm grateful for. And mostly, I would say that I've been in a state of gratefulness for having had 5 years with a wonderful person who I loved. It's a beautiful thing. Wouldn't have traded it for anything.
I thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Jack, would you like me to ask Steve, who you've met, my husband, of 26 years, whether he'd consider you as a throuple?
I don't really know what that means. Anyway, let's thank you, Helen, and let's see if other people have.
Before we move past that, I just want to thank you for your vulnerability. It was a very rich unfolding. Michael, did you want to say something to no, you were unmuted. I wasn't sure. So let's move on to Joe Fletcher. Thank you very much for waiting, Joe.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thank you. It was some advice I wanted to ask, really, because after reading the Modelo book, I'm looking to do a community thing in my local town, and I've got some people together, and we've been having meetings. But what we're starting is with people who've been through the psychiatric system. But the kind of issues, we've got some people who are quite angry at psychiatrists and see them as the devil's spawn, and they're quite angry at the pharmaceutical industry as well. They're seeing corruption and feel that they've been permanently damaged by the psychiatrists. But my kind of idea was to bring the professionals and the clients and the people who've been through the system together. But it's hard as well because the mental health system is so medication biased in this country. And it's how we get people to see past the psychiatrists, the role that they are, and see them as people beyond that. But when people are so angry at them, I mean, I do want to move out into a whole community thing eventually, but this is the starter. So it's just some advice on that, really, please.
Well, first of all, I think it's a really wonderful idea to get psychiatrists and people who have been on the receiving end of it in the same room together, talking with each other.
Yeah.
Because I would say both sides have a lot to learn from each other. And the only advice that I would give about it, because I don't like to give advice, is in order for it to work, people have to understand deep listening. Deep listening, I don't know whether, people on this this group right here, whether everybody knows what deep listening is or not. So let me just say a couple of things about it. It's really listening the way I heard Sid Banks. Way, way, way beyond the intellect, way beyond the words, being a complete blank, having absolutely nothing on our mind, being an empty vessel. And just taking people in to the extent that you can feel them, you could say. And when that happens, we tend to hear things that don't have that much to do with what they're saying. It has to do with, I don't know, it just bubbles up from us. We get a hit about something, if our mind is clear enough. And then if we're going to talk, we talk out of that. But the listening part, I remember hearing George Pransky saying once, and this always stuck with me, that there's always a grain of truth in the other side. I just have to, I'm sorry, I have to tell you where my mind went. My mind went, is that true with Donald Trump? Sorry about that. Anyway, if there's a grain of truth in the other side, the idea would be to listen for what that grain of truth is. But we can't listen for it by applying our intellect to it. We will pick up what the grain of truth is if we're in deep listening mode. Because if people, psychiatrists and patients are going to come together, they're going to have to listen to each other, or they're just going to be talking at each other. And then it's not going to get very far. We want what Helen said earlier, you know, is people dropping into their hearts. and really speaking from their hearts and not from their intellect, and having it be heard at the other end, really deeply and from those hearts themselves. And that's when people are going to come together. So that's the only advice I would give.
Thank you. I mean, some idea I had was actually just to have events and get people to mix with each other, not even say to them it's going to be meeting, and just invite professionals, invite members of the public and clients and that, and just have like meals or any kind of event, just so they can see each other as being people and not the labels or the ideas.
Well, that's an even better idea to start off with. You know, that's exactly what happened with Roger Mills and Medella. You know, feed people, they get interested.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you.
Tom, welcome. Great to see you.
Yeah, hi, Kelly. Hi, Jack. Nice to meet you. I really appreciated something that you said about how quickly things can change, because that's what happened to me, where I was in a long period of feeling I was really severely depressed, and it literally changed in a moment. And I'm grateful that because I was in this conversation, I noticed that. And my question for you has to do with people who I share with my experience, about my experience, who seem, really interested. Almost every person who I talk to will say, at some point in the conversation, what will come up is they'll say, well, yeah, that sounds great, but what about trauma? And it's kind of what I've noticed in the past maybe couple years is a lot of people kind of in my circles and what I read are just talking about how, trauma is stored in the body, and you can't deal with, people can't heal from trauma unless you deal with what's going on in the body. And for me, that doesn't personally make any sense. That's not my experience. But I just wondered, do you have anything to say on that subject? Is that relevant at all to this discussion? That the idea?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's basically what I said before. Trauma is something that happened to people, that really happened.
Mm-hmm.
It happened in the outside world. Some of the things that happen to people are horrible. I'm noticing this light on my face. There's this sunlight is like beaming through the window here, through these blinds. So I look like a zebra right now. Trauma can be an extremely difficult thing. And I can understand how it can end up in the cells, but not, I don't totally know about this, but my guess is not from the trauma itself, but from the rest of it that happens, from the everything else part. Yes, that happened. It was horrible. But we inadvertently have taken what happened to us and have made meaning of it for ourselves. And that meaning can be completely different from one person to another, given the same traumatic experience. It's like, people who come out of war and have very similar circumstances, and some people come out with PTSD and other people don't.
Yeah.
And I know that there are levels of consciousness, and I know that levels of consciousness have a different vibration to them. And I know that thought don't know if the right word is triggers a certain vibration. So let's say we get like extremely fearful, just end up with depression over our trauma. There's a vibration that happens that gets, it's a vibration that's so thick and heavy, it can get into the cells. I believe that it can get into the cells. Now, you know, people could work on the body, you know, and sometimes people have actually been released that way. But when they are released that way, the release comes with new thought. And sometimes people can be helped to see that it doesn't really matter what happened to them, no matter how horrible it was, because their soul can't be touched.
Yeah.
Was never touched, cannot possibly be harmed. And people can see that, people can be helped to see that their own thinking has been as much of a culprit as the original perpetrator.
Yeah.
Like if the trauma's over, like not happening now, their own thinking is now the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that are continuing to hold it innocently within themselves. And suffering from it over and over and over again. And when people realize they don't have to do that, anymore, when that release comes, it's like a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
I don't know what else to say about it.
Wow. Thank you. That is so powerful. And what it comes back to me is in the title of your book is just hope. How important hope is. So thank you so much. That was beautiful.
You're welcome, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. I think it's Martine and then Mick. If I have that wrong, I apologize.
Well, maybe yes, maybe
Oh,
not.
this is the Martine I was hoping it was. Hi, Martine.
Hi, Jack. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Sorry about you, Nicole.
Oh, thank you.
The question is about, no, you're the master of deep listening, and I learned from you. And there's one person in this world that I'm having a hard time deep listening. My sister has mental health issues and all kinds of other problems in her life, and she could call me up to 15 times a day. Trying to point in the direction, but she feels so justified in her anger.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing less than revenge will satisfy her. So even though I'm trying to point, and I must admit, after 2 years, my capacity to deep listen now is nil. Totally. I know we cannot make people see the light. And I've tried pointing in different ways. I know it's not on me. It's her life. It's not my life. But when people feel so justified in their anger, it's so justified. that if I point her in her own wellness, she sees it as letting the other party win. And her ex-husband is a perverse narcissist, and he's gaslighting her and did all kinds of wrong things. But when there's so much anger, they're not ready to see the light. So I guess after 2 years, I was hoping that she will change. And also, my capacity to deep listen to her is nil anymore.
Did you say this was your sister?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay, so the only reason we're not able to deep listen to somebody, or we lose our capacity down the line to deep listen to them, is because we have thinking about them. And that thinking, as long as we're having it, makes it impossible to deep listen to somebody. Now, the other thing I heard from you is trying to make something happen with her, trying to get her to see. As soon as we do that, we're off of deep listening. You know, the big question for us all, whether it's a family member or whether it's a client or whatever, is like, what does it have to do with us? What does her anger have to do with us? You know, she may say things to us out of her anger. That's what's in the outside world. The rest of it is us. Okay. So easy to forget that, but it's true. There are only two things that I know that allow the possibility of breaking through with someone. And that is love and listening. And if you are able to put aside all of the things that you think about her, take it off of your mind, and there's any feeling of love there whatsoever for her, that's what you want to put out from you to her. And it doesn't matter whether she picks up on it or not. Doesn't matter. Because if she doesn't, nothing's going to happen anyway. You'll just be in the same position you are now. So if you have love in your heart toward her, that's what you're putting out. That's what she's able to take in. That can shift things. And if you're able to put aside the thinking that you have about her and trying to get someplace with her, I mean, we're really, what business do we have trying to get someplace with anybody? I mean, if people are, you know, paying us, maybe we can think, but even that's not true. Even that's not true. We're just here. We're pointing in a direction. It's none of our business whether people actually pick it up or not. You know? So that's what I would have to say about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's good to see you, Martine.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, good to see you. Hi, Mick. Welcome.
Mick, I was hoping you would get
Hi
in there.
there.
I saw you, but I couldn't acknowledge you.
Hi, Jack.
How you doing?
I don't have a question for you.
Oh, you just wanted me to acknowledge you.
No, I just wanted to say I love you, man.
Oh, thank you.
Just yeah. I was like an excited child before this webinar. Oh, Missy Jack. So I just want to say hi.
That's very kind.
And a big virtual hug.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. Great to see you.
And you.
Anybody else have anything for me?
Yes, Jack. Ivan here.
Ivan,
I love you.
how you doing?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Great.
I just have to tell you, I had a conversation today about exactly the topic you talked about here, the last sister struggling with her sister. And I told her, hug her. Give her as much love as you can. And it's magic. Love is magic.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just so interesting what happens when we step away from our thinking about somebody and just realize who they are to us, you know. And even if they're not anybody to us, they are a fellow human being on the, traveling the same road that we are, using the same three principles that we are to create their experience of life. And if we have ever gotten into difficulties in our lives, then we understand. And our hearts can go out to them with compassion.
Yes.
And it's innocence what we get ourselves into. And love, John Lennon was right. What can I say? All you need is love.
Yes. It's magic. Thank you, Jack, for being here. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Anna, please. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from New Zealand. Good to see you, Jack. We never spoke before. I was just, two things came up. Thank you, Martin, for that question. Thank you, Jack, for your answer. And it makes perfect sense that recently I had this realization that as a facilitator, my job is to mirror love and acceptance for my clients as they are. And it makes sort of sense. It will be hard to mirror acceptance if I have thinking that they should be different. Right. So that makes perfect sense and kind of came together for me. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is about the listening. Is there a point where it starts being counterproductive to let people talk and face the direction of their mind, thoughts, narrative, and all of that? And it would, how would you go about when, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm inviting thinking by just keeping on listening, because it can go in circular. I hope it makes sense what I'm trying to say. Is there a point where?
It's a great question. But it's actually not a how question. A lot of people ask how questions. It's really a what question. Because the answer is, we are so lucky to have wisdom within us that is always speaking to us, but because the rest of our thinking is so loud, we often can't hear it. Wisdom will tell us when someone is starting to talk too long. Because some people talk just to listen to themselves. Some people talk to avoid going where they need to go to really be helped. Some people need to get things off their chest before they can even settle down to listen. So, but our wisdom is there to guide us about which of those things or any one of a number of other things it is. And that will tell us when to shut people off or not. I mean, I've been in sessions with people that I've said, are you really getting anywhere that you want to get right now? You know, but that came to me in the moment.
Yeah.
You know, if I tried to use that with somebody else, it wouldn't work, because it's whatever comes to us in the moment. It's where wisdom is. What is wisdom telling us to say? What is wisdom telling us about when to cut people off, whether it's necessary? I mean, I've had people talk for almost the entire session, and because they needed to get something off their chest, and then in the last 5 minutes, because it was off their chest, we got really far together. And if they hadn't talked like that, you know, I don't know that we would have gotten there. So it really, really depends. And wisdom is always right.
That's lovely. Thank you. I hear Elsie say that everyone is due a good listen. And
Yeah.
I certainly am grateful that someone did that for me. Let me talk and talk and talk. It's just the God, the wisdom, and the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear that in what you say. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Anna. I lost Estelle. I don't know where she went. So let's carry on. Joe, you have another question? Come on. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, I did put it in the chat box. It was because of the conversation I was having with someone, but they were saying about that you need to accept first that you were a victim before you can move on and not deny it, because it's a big thing in the UK now that you can't call people victims, or they can't call themselves victims. It has to be survivors. And so they actually will tell people, no, you can't call yourself a victim. And so I just kind of wanted to hear your views on that, please.
I don't really care what people call themselves. I care what people think about themselves. And if people, you know, and also depends, you know, what does a victim mean? The word victim can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so if I were listening to somebody and they call themselves a victim, I would want to find out, well, what do you mean exactly? You know, what does that mean to you that you're a victim? And that's how I would go down into deep listening with them about that. Or people said, I'm a survivor. Well, what does that mean to you exactly? What does that mean? And I would want to like get at it in those ways. I mean, those terms are just labels, and you know, labels have a tendency to like put a box around people, and I just don't want to go there. And so I want to get underneath the box through listening deeper about it. Is that helpful?
Yes, great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Good. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, William. Welcome back.
I just want to say how much love I feel. And that word has so many different meanings to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that it's often so much easier for me to deep listen to somebody else, like you, for instance. It seems so much easier than listening deep to myself.
I probably find it easier to deep listen to you than to myself.
I just love, I've read your books. It's like I just get you through osmosis. And you're so, it's just how you put words together to describe the formless energy that I talk about. And I guess the question I have is that I've been around the principles for so many years, and I feel like never having got that big jump off the cliff feeling, but it feels so much more like little incremental glimpses. And yet my mind tends to compare that with falling off the cliff. And yet I just love it when I'm closer to that cliff falling feeling. It's maybe not such a deep cliff that I have always thought or compared others to. So I just love how you, I just love listening to you. I guess that's it. It just makes it so easy.
Well, thank you, William. I mean, Sid Banks kept saying to us, "You're making it too complicated. You know, it's so simple. It's simplicity itself." And we couldn't hear that in the early days until we actually saw it ourselves. I mean, I would say that it really probably hasn't been for the last less than 10 years out of all the times that I have been looking in this direction that I was able to talk like this. So it took me about 17 years to be able to talk like this. And I don't even know what this is actually. You know, it's just what happens to come out of me now. I'm grateful for it, but it's not something like I'm striving for or attempting to do. Every time before I do a session of any kind, whether it's an individual session or a group like this, I say a little prayer and I get myself into my own health, no matter what else is going on in my life, you know. And that as soon as I do that, I can feel myself just go vroom, and focus in on just what's in front of me and the task at hand. And I'm not sure what else is going on.
And it does feel like the doorway to that moment is when I just have no idea what to talk about or think about. And it's that moment that just feels so quieter.
Yes, it is. And you know, you mentioned comparison thoughts before. Comparison thoughts are killer thoughts.
I know.
And we would be amazed if we really paid attention to our thinking. We would be amazed at how many comparison thoughts we have throughout the day. You want a homework assignment? Pay attention to your thinking and see how many are comparison thoughts, and see if those comparison thoughts do you one bit of good. There's absolutely no good that can come from them. And yet we fall into that. I fall into it. Yeah, it just never does any good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, William.
How are you feeling, Jack?
I'm sorry, that reminded me of something else. An amazing insight came to me a couple of weeks ago. just out of the blue, these things very rarely happen to me, but it's like somebody else seems to be speaking to me and I'm just hearing it. Because left to my own devices, I never would have come up with this on my own. But I got to read it to you because it's very, very simple. Are we going to believe the illusion, or are we going to look to the light? I mean, if that doesn't sum up the three principles in one little statement, I don't know what does. Are we going to believe the illusion, or are we going to look to the light? What is the illusion? Anything that we create with our thinking. And the light is everything that's left when it's not there. I mean, if that's not simplicity itself, I don't know what is. And we get to decide which one we're gonna look to. And most of us look to the illusion as we go through life. And everywhere I have a blind spot, I look to the illusion. I call it reality. Call it reality, but it really isn't.
Anna.
You know, because I was listening to somebody else, but the thing that's helped me most with my breakup that I'm going through right now, and not knowing a place where I'm going to go, is I heard at a much, much deeper level than I've ever heard it before, even though I kind of knew it. We are 100% responsible for our own experience. 100%. And when we, you know, we don't want that kind of responsibility. You know, we don't want it, but we've got it, whether we want it or not. And if we take it, if we really take it, wow, I am 100% responsible for the experience I'm having about the fact that my relationship broke up. Like it's all me. Unbelievable. That like changes everything. And it's what's kept me afloat.
I'm just taking a moment and basking in that message. It really hit me, really, really hit me. And ironically, this light has come gently blazing through the window back at the time you said that.
Yeah.
How are you feeling, Jack?
Feeling good.
Yeah. We have another question up. Are you good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, Anna, please.
Oh, I just, you know, what you say about facing towards the light or believing the illusion. I'm finding out that the more that I face towards the light, which is for me, it's another way to point to the stable aspect of my mind. The thinking seems to fall away, seems to burn, like just the simple, I don't know, simple, but just the act of looking towards that seems to create the feelings that I'm looking for, that I've been looking for outside. So
Yes.
I
Me
really
too.
felt your insight, and yeah, and I just wanted to share that I'm seeing that.
And the amazing thing to me about it really is that we are the light.
Yeah.
We are the light. Every single one of us. It's just, for a lot of us, it's buried under all this thought. So when we're looking to the light, we're really looking to within ourselves, who we really are, instead of who we think we are. Treasures, it's treasures.
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm in a deep, beautiful feeling.
Probably a good time to quit. No, I would take any more questions that people have.
Well, everybody, this has been really rich. And the questions have been very, very insightful for me. I just wanted to give Estelle one more opportunity. Estelle, you had written in the chat and I had seen that and I saw your hand up. Did you want to say?
Yes, thank you. Each time I had a question, I had an answer. So, yeah, that was great. And I remember when I met Jack for the first time was at the Viva conference, the 3 Principal Viva conference in Spain. And my relationship was not working with my partner. And we've been together for 17 years, but it got better since the conference. And I was in this place where I had no more thinking. And I didn't know what to do with that. After the conference, I was completely lost, completely lost, and not lost, but in a good way. Like, yes, and I'm completely relaxed now with the relationship, and it's just got better and better and better. I also. Martine talked about her sister, but I had the same relationship with my dad. But he was not calling 15, almost the same. He was not calling me. He was not calling me at all. we just lost sight for 10 years or so. And after the conference, it just opened up again, like just a few months after. And there's still like a lot of irregularity, but I'm completely fine with that. And I have no thinking about it. And when my dad wants to talk, then I'm here. And when he doesn't, I have no judgment about it. And I guess that's why it's getting more regular, like he's coming back so often. And I just embrace his presence when he's here, and that's all.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what made the breakthrough.
Sorry, Jack?
Embracing his presence.
Yes.
Is probably, well, I'm guessing, but it's probably what helped the relationship most.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And yeah, I'm just happy he's happy. Wherever. Yeah. So yes, and it's fantastic. And I had that question about how to help parents with who stress about whatever would happen to their child who have learning differences, because I'm in this position as well, but I have no more fear about it, and I wanted to share the principle as I've learned them with the parents, And this video call has changed the whole thing.
That's good.
and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do what I've done with my sister and with my dad. And yeah.
Love and listening.
Yes. Presence and acceptance, love and acceptance. Yes, I've heard that. Yes, very nice. Yeah. So thank you for pointing again to the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Estelle.
Mm.
Well, we're coming to the close of the room, and there's a pouring of gratitude in the chat for you, Jack, for coming out of retirement and sharing your love and wisdom. And so I just want to thank my good friend Meg Zucchero, who's been ferociously letting people in the room the entire conversation. Thank you, my dear friend. And it's through those services that people can get here. And so very much appreciated, Meg. And to the rest of you, thank you for coming, and thank you for being a part of what Jack was so willing to do when he said yes to me months ago. And I hope to see you next week with Ankush Jain and some sweet sharing at 11 a.m. PDT. And until then, find yourself a kind mind. And Jack, will you
Thank
stay
you all
on?
for being here. Nice to see you all.
Will you stay on for a minute until after we go? Thank you. Bye, everybody. Send love. Turn on your mic. Say goodbye to Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Go Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you,
Go
Jack.
safely.
Go Red Sox. Go Red Sox.